Zero, you've been playing a game that was released late last month, but I think just started getting playable this past month. This month, what have you been playing this week?
Been putting a lot of time into Warhammer 40K Darktide, since it's free on Xbox Game Pass and everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a fan of Vermintide, this is just more of that, but in the sci-fi realm of Warhammer 40K. So if you're kind of into the whole grimdark aesthetic, then this will have just loads of that for you, especially from sort of like the grimdark style, like dialogue that and quotes that you see on the loading screens, to just fighting against all sorts of chaos agents that their heads are just infected with maggots and stuff when you hack them open with like a chainsaw sword and stuff like that. It's a lot of gory fun, but it does have its fair share of issues as well too.
Is there still performance issues and stability issues in the game?
Game is extremely demanding on resources and everything, because I don't know why, and this was this is a problem that I also noticed on Vermintide as well too. For some reason, the loading screens will require GPU usage.
What?
And yeah, I'll see my GPU spike to like 99% of the GPU being used, and then shoot back down to like something low, like 20%. So just really unusually high GPU usage in some really weird times. But I think really the big glaring problem that most people feel is the elephant in the room is the fact that the Xbox Game Pass version and the Steam version are not crossplay compatible. So basically, if you were to play it for free on Game Pass, but you've got a friend who was just like, well, I bought it on Steam because I had some Steam credit. Yeah, technically you two can't even match make together.
Yeah.
Fatshark did mention this on a giant fact post that they put on the Steam version page of Darktide on questions asking about crossplay. They're like, no, it will not be available at launch, but we will be trying to work as quickly as we can to get this feature implemented. What that means, or as far as a date, nobody on Earth knows.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so yeah, that's been a bit of an annoyance, because I believe I have a few friends who've already purchased it on Steam, and knowing that technically I wouldn't be able to party up with them is a little bit of an annoyance.
That does sound annoying. I'm looking at the requirements right now. I'm looking at recommended. Recommended graphics card, an RTX 3060 or a Radeon RX 5700 XT, an Intel i7 9700K. Good lord. Like, these are beefy requirements. The graphics card is about a generation old, which is, I think, about, what, 2 or 3 years? How long was the RTX 3060 out? Was it a year or two?
I believe so.
Yeah. And then the i7 9700K is a processor that was... We're at the 1100s right now? 11,000s?
No, 13. We're at the
Good
13th
lord.
generation.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, so I'm way off. Still pretty beefy. With the recommended specs being that, are the graphics really good? Does it play really smooth? Or is there a reason for this game to be that technically demanding?
I can't honestly say, mostly because I'm running on a 7th gen Core i7
Right.
with a GTX 1080. So for me, I'm running the game on medium settings, but even on medium, just there is very heavy GPU usage. So it's just kind of one of those things that just has me sort of scratching my head going, what on earth is going on? But yeah, no idea.
But do you see anything? Is there anything that you could, I guess, glean from it? Since you don't have a really beefy system, is there something you can glean from the gameplay that makes you understand why it needs that kind of technical specs?
My guess is for the big mob rushes that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's where just a lot of the graphical horsepower is required, because just every once in a while, I mean, it's just like Left 4 Dead, that you'll have moments where just it might be an ambush and you'll just have just tons of Chaos Disciples just bum rushing the hell out of you and your team. And of course, just when that happens, combat gets frenetic because usually when these bum rushes happen, typically using your firearm is kind of useless unless you have a firearm that just unloads at a very high rate of fire. Because at that point, you're better off just using your melee weapon and just slashing and smashing through these hordes. So maybe that's where things get a little crazy too. And then I know some of the enemies also have some real crazy effects. The big one being the Tox Flamer, which basically shoots a flamethrower that's got some sort of toxic quality to the fire that makes it glow like a toxic green. So maybe the real-time flame effect generation is also causing issues too. Again, I'm not too sure on it because my system is pretty much an antique at this point.
Do you think because I have a fairly limited to now a limited system myself, do you think maybe it would be better to play it on the Xbox Series X, or what are your thoughts on that?
Currently, the game is not available on Xbox. It's just a PC only thing.
Oh, God, that's right.
I believe Fatshark said that they are working on some console ports, and potentially that means that if they do produce some console ports, it could just be like Vermintide 2, where it's only available on Xbox, or we could see a situation where they want to get all the sales that they possibly can, and it might arrive both on Xbox Series X and PS5. There's no telling.
When Left 4 Dead became the big game, or Left 4 Dead 2 as well, became like the big games. I think it was down back in, God, was it 2010, 2011? Am I right? Am I right on that?
Yeah. I want to say Left 4 Dead 2 came out back in 2010.
Okay. Like, I remember them being insanely popular because mainly, well, the gameplay, of course, but the achievements. And since I wasn't really a big achievement person, there really wasn't anything to make me strive for something. Which is why I like Vermintide 2 so much, because yes, you have the same gameplay loops over and over again, but the thing to build up is to get better gear and to get a better power ranking as you play the game. What is the thing that Darktide does that makes you want to go forward to do more and more runs? Is it the same thing as Vermintide, or do they do different things?
One element is the same as Vermintide, that you're constantly trying to get better loot to increase your gear score, and as you increase your gear score, you're doing more DPS, which means you can end up slaughtering through swaths of much more beefier enemies in the higher difficulties. And unlike in Vermintide 2 rather, missions do have difficulty levels. So like the lowest difficulty level is just going to be the basic mission objective. So it might be an espionage mission where you're trying to sneak into one of the Tertium Hive City bases to get a satellite uplink to transmit information to the Imperium of Man. And that might be the only objective on like the easy difficulty, which is like a rank 1. And then when you get into like the rank 2 and rank 3s, that's where you get like the secondary optional objectives that are added in. So it might be something like find 5 grimoires hidden within the map to get like an extra bonus of XP and cash credits to buy better weapons and better gear. And on top of that, there's also a purification sort of mechanic where you can have your weapons consecrated and basically ranked up. So you have tainted weapons, which are kind of like your common grade weapons, and then you have your consecrated weapons, which are kind of like your uncommon rank weapons, and they're colored green for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can upgrade a consecrated weapon into a relic weapon, which is like a blue rare colored one, and it gains additional perks from that. And then I believe from rare you can go to epic, which is the purple color, and then from epic to legendary. So there's an upgrade path to bump your weapons up. So you'll want to play missions to grind out for those credits to do the consecrations and everything. So that's another that's another grind treadmill to get on. And then lastly, kind of taking a note from Vermintide 2, you also have weekly missions. The thing with the weekly missions is you can't access them until your character hits level 11. And then once they hit level 11, then the weekly missions will unlock. And the weekly missions also take a bit from Destiny 2 because they'll give you a special different type of credit which can be used on the vendor who offers you the special weekly missions. And they will sell, in particular, weapons that can only be bought from this store. And the weapons are typically graded at epic grade and colored in purple. So some of these weapons are pretty strong. So naturally, just if you want some of these cool weapons, then you're going to want to try to bang out the weekly objective so you get the most out of the credits and everything.
I guess the main question I have to ask is this just a reskinned Vermintide 2? Or are there enough differences to where if you're really into Vermintide 2, you'd want to check out Darktide?
I think really the big difference is the fact that you do have actual sci-fi grade firearms. It's not like some of the firearm-like weapons in Vermintide 2 where you might get like one shot out of this like blunderbuss, and then you have to reload the blunderbuss in a very slow way. This has like the usual sort of Warhammer 40K weapons. So you've got laser rifles, you've got infantry rifles, you've got fully automatic pistols as well too. So just weapons that have an actual sizable magazine that you can use. You can use firearms for most of the mission, and then when the hordes come, then you can switch to your melee weapon and just start going to town on that. Whereas Vermintide, the combat is mostly going to be melee, just due to the nature of the weapons and everything. And ranged weapons in Vermintide 2 are mostly for just sort of like circumstantial situations, like if you're trying to get one of these special enemies that's at a distance and trying to pick them off before they kind of outflank you and just gank you at that point for not paying attention. I think that's where a lot of the difference is, the fact that you can use firearms for most of the mission, and the melee is just kind of there for very up close and personal situations, whereas in Vermintide 2, it was completely the opposite, where just most of the killing is definitely going to be melee range, and then just ranged weapons will mostly be relegated to doing stuff like picking off just not swats of enemies, but picking off the occasional enemy that's just kind of trying to skulk around and flank your team and everything.
I guess the question I have with this game, because this is a game I'm also interested in, but I do have Vermintide 2, and I really like this game. Is there a reason right now to get off of Vermintide 2 and to jump into Darktide if you are really into Vermintide 2? Like, if you are still into grinding those characters and getting the best gear in that game, would you recommend somebody to forget all their progress on Vermintide 2 and just jump into Darktide? Or what does Darktide have to do in order to get those players out of Vermintide 2?
I think really the bigger question is going to be whether you prefer the setting of Warhammer Fantasy or if you're more into the sci-fi sort of setting that Warhammer 40K has going for it, and Darktide being based in the Warhammer 40K universe.
So basically, you think that the reason why this game is made was because they want to cater to a different audience, but with the same flavor of gameplay.
Yeah, that's personally my take on it.
Okay. This is $30 right now, but on Game Pass. Am I correct on that?
40 for the standard edition, and then I think it's 60 for the Imperial edition, and that gives you stuff like some bonus outfits for all four characters. You get a special portrait frame for your profile. You get a backpack cosmetic that looks a little bit neat, and then they give you 2,500 Aquillas, which is the premium currency, and the Aquillas are mostly used for just cosmetic stuff. So if you want to change your character up to be themed like a legendary personality in the Warhammer 40K universe, then basically you'll be using your Aquilas to go to the cash shop and basically say, yeah, I want to buy this skin set for this much, or hey, I want to get a custom skin for one of my favorite guns in the game or something like that.
Would you recommend the game?
If you kind of like Left 4 Dead combat, but didn't really like Vermintide 2 being more melee focused, then yeah, Darktide is probably going to be something I would probably recommend. If you're one of those that really wants to be able to play with your friends, be it on any platform, I would say wait a bit until they finally get the logistics for cross-platform play solved, because that's something I can understand most people holding off on the purchase, because yeah, just the fact that the Xbox Game Pass version on PC can only play with just anyone who's playing the Windows PC Store version of it is kind of annoying, especially if most of your friends have already bought it on Steam. Then yeah, just a little bit annoying, and even more so the fact that you can link your Xbox account with the Fatshark account management system, and I believe you can do the same with Steam, but I don't know if that means eventually cross progression will also be a feature that will be added, because I know potentially if I do end up getting the game later on Steam, there is certainly a chance that I could lose all of my progress that I'm working on now on Xbox Game Pass, which would be a bit of an annoyance.
That's pretty lame. That sucks. Aside from some technical issues and the fact that the progression isn't available, you would recommend this, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially if you're kind of into the Left 4 Dead style gameplay. And what's neat about the game is the game definitely encourages you to stick together with your crew, especially because the closer that you and your teammates stick together, you'll get a party-wide bonus that applies to everyone. So yeah, it's definitely one of those games that definitely encourages you to stick together, and wandering off alone is definitely discouraged, because I can't tell you how many times that I have gotten into a random lobby and just somebody ends up just going against the game's advice and goes, well, I want to go look around and see if there's extra loot and shit, and then sure enough, because they decided to separate themselves from the rest of the group, they get ganked. We, the rest of the team, have to go back, save them from being ganked, and then kill the monster that's still skulking around and everything. That's one piece of advice that I would just mention to people. Just yeah, if you're playing the game online with like random people or with friends, stick close together, because the game will give you a damage bonus for it, and also you can watch each other's backs so you don't get ganked by a random special enemy.
If you're a fan of Vermintide 2 and you prefer the sci-fi setting, give it a shot. There are issues and there are inconveniences, but still worth a try. It is available on PC at Steam and on Microsoft. There's Xbox Game Pass that's available on, and we have no word on consoles at this. They are announced, but we have no idea when they're coming. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's $40 for Warhammer 40K Darktide. Zero cautiously recommends it. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I would say if you're a Game Pass subscriber, just check it out. Just download it and check it out.
Okay. Go ahead and check out Warhammer 40K Darktide on PC. Thank you for listening to this podcast segment. The Capital Games podcast is done every week, and we post it on all your favorite podcast apps, as well as segments on YouTube. If you want to listen to another segment, you can listen to a new one right there on the screen. We also do a movie podcast called the Capital Games Movie Club. If you'd like, you can go ahead and click on that and see all the movies that we have reviewed from that point. Thank you for listening, and we hope to hear from you soon.